Rafterman and Zed here, and today is a treat because I get to introduce you to the grain silo that will come to loom over the town's city center as a monument to the surrounding farmland of the town of Echo. This structure is fully functional with hidden storage facilities inside at ground level that Sims can work at and drop off goods. My take on the building is inspired by some of the amazing work that Imperator has done for his one tile per episode series. His first episode featured a larger grain silo for his port, and it really got the gears turning for me, so I adapted it as an anchor for my Midwest city. Unfortunately, the latest update threw me for a loop, so I'm no longer able to access old save files for easier cinematics and gameplay, but I still have the build footage I can use to highlight this part of the project. A lot of the hyperlapse, you'll see me experimenting with different surfaces, assets, and prop placements, so please bear with me as you observe my process. With that, I hope you enjoy this part of the build, and I hope you can find some inspiration in the way I put together this makeshift grain silo. Like in much of this build, I utilized the static building prop mod by Kushnik. You can find reference to it in the mod list for SkyV in the description. While I experimented with other industrial building storage props, I settled on Imperator's method by making heavy use of the 2x4 industrial oil storage containers. While non-functional, later you might see me hide some functional storage buildings within them. Because the buildings can be raised and lowered without terraforming surrounding land, it made it super easy to copy and paste each prop in the same location, then raise them to appear to be a larger grain silo. Finally, you'll notice that after I'm done experimenting, I delete everything and pull a prefab I created during earlier testing and place it alongside with other pieces that went into the silo's appearance. As we continue into the build, you may have taken note of the few props I've utilized to create the illusion of the grain silo. I use concrete pillars precisely positioned next to each other to act as sort of a roof and hide some of the irrelevant details of the oil tanks at the top. It also provided a clean surface to add more details to and have a bit more control over how everything looks. Additionally, I made heavy use of industrial decoration props that included pipes and tanks to help sell the look. What I've really enjoyed, however, is the addition of the prop mine shafts, as they act as a representation of a material elevator that you could say raises the resources into the silo. While it's not a perfect representation, I'd say it all comes together quite nicely as we approach the stage where I start placing support buildings, garages, decals, and so on. Grain elevators are typically surrounded by industrial support buildings and other businesses. So, I wanted to represent that by creating a chaotic, dusty environment by using decals and borrowing some of the designs from across the town for a garage. I decided that the best way to fit the theme for Monument County was to reference the real-life Bayport area by sliding over to Pigeon, Michigan, and taking inspiration from the block their grain elevator sits. While I'm taking up a bit more space than they did with my block, I think it integrates quite nicely for the city. Earlier, I mentioned making the structure functional, and luckily the solution is extremely easy and authentic to the building's purpose. I simply placed ploppable industrial agriculture storage buildings within the oil tanks and got rid of their extra props. This way, the colossal structure isn't just for show. I plan on placing much more within the oil tanks in the future. I mentioned placing decals earlier to make the area look dusty and industrial. I played around with different base surfaces, but I settled on utilizing decals over the surfaces. Here, you can see me placing Real Vision decals by Static Noise. These high-resolution decals can be found on Sully's Discord, and I highly recommend that you pop over to make use of these amazing assets. Many users often ask me how I create the North American Center two-way turn lane in my cities. The mod I use is Custom Road Assets by Surmainer, as their assets feature the center turn lane. Surprisingly, it does act as a turn lane, as there is a separate path for Sims to use. While they don't use it to turn onto other roads, they do use it as a turn lane into businesses. I will say use it at your own risk, as you'll never know if it'll break and break all your saves. But the aesthetic and functional appeal of these roads draws me to them, and I think they're essential for my city. They can even be edited in Road Builder. You just have to be clever with copy-pasting lanes, as they will not be available in the menu. Continuing the grain elevator's environment, here you'll see me return to it and place farm equipment to mimic a co-op storage area, or farm equipment store. I think these props really add to the liveliness of the area, and I'm quite happy that these are all vanilla props. As one of the final touches for many structures in this build, I like to add these large stain decals on the sides of roofs and buildings. It signifies age and dirt, and because the game is quite sterile when it comes to the reality of cities being broken and dirty, these add a much needed texture to much of the city. To place decals on the sides of buildings, I had to disable the upright setting so that I could get them to snap to the side of the grain elevator. Rounding off this episode, I wanted to highlight the expansion to the town that helps frame the grain elevator and add context to the area. There isn't much to say here, as much of what I did in episode 1 is repeated here with variation. I also included a couple of generic looking manufacturing facilities bordered by residential, which you'll find in most small towns like this. here we are. We've completed the massive grain elevator that will loom over the town for years to come. The town will grow around it, and maybe one day it'll no longer be needed, turning into an urbex dream. Perhaps once the town grows to a larger metropolis, I can adapt this area to be more abandoned, full of graffiti and blight. But that's a long way away. With that, I really hope you gained some wonderful inspiration from this video, and I can't wait to see what the community does next. As I said in the last episode, it's amazing watching all the crazy creations that come from the community. I would also like to welcome all the new subscribers who hopped on board after the first episode. I was blown away by how well that episode did, and I really hope I can charge with similar momentum. To that, I kindly ask that if you liked this episode, please consider liking and subscribing to my channel. The more I get, the easier it'll be to find free time to devote to these creations. Next episode, I'll expand the city with new commercial and develop the land behind the grain elevator and turn it into a rail hub and ore storage. That one should be just as fun as this episode. Until next time, I'm Rafterman and Zed. Cheers!